Text 1. Cool tourist map. The Bath Sea Thermocolor Map is an ingenious little guide that will lead you a certain way through the city of Bath, England, depending on the weather. Employing thermochromic ink and tijdvak fabric, it is activated at different temperatures to reveal layers of hand-illustrated attractions, thus showing the best places to visit in specific conditions. So come rain or shine, you'll have enough options to experience Bath time and time again. CamillaHempleman.com, 2015. Text 2. Why choose the world's oldest horse charity? Because our work is far from done. Back in 1886, Lindo set up a home of rest for horses, mules and donkeys. Our first resident was an overworked London cab horse. During the First World War, the Home of Rest for Horses provided the first ambulance to evacuate wounded horses from the front line in France. Back home, there were still thousands of working horses in desperate need of help. Today, the Horse Trust Sanctuary in the Chiltern Hills caters for the retirement needs of over 100 horses, donkeys and ponies. Our residents now come from the Mounted Police Force, Army regiments, riding for the disabled and sometimes also much-loved family pets. We also collaborate with other welfare organizations to rescue and rehome severely neglected horses, ponies and donkeys. The Horse Trust is the UK's largest provider of equine welfare grants. We are committed to promoting equine health and welfare through knowledge and ethical scientific research to reduce disease and suffering. Find out more at www.horsetrust.org.uk. Please help by sending us a donation or consider us when writing your will. We greatly appreciate your support. The Horse Trust, the world's oldest equine charity. Reg Charity number 231748. Text 3. Tesla's Model 3. Last week, the legendary entrepreneur Elon Musk introduced the Tesla Model 3, the company's most ambitious car yet. The company's previous models, the Roadster, the Model S sedan, and the Model X SUV, are all luxury electric vehicles. The Model 3 is Tesla's first car truly aimed at the mass market. It looks great, but can it be a success? 2, 3, 4. TheWeek.com, 2016. Text 4. Tiny Living. Adapted from a blog by Ashley Rossi. 1. If you haven't come across a tiny home TV show or BuzzFeed article yet, let me be the first to introduce you to the concept of tiny living. It's a minimalist lifestyle that's resonating with multiple generations, and some people are going so far as to ditch their 4-bedroom homes and white picket fences for a mini-sized house on wheels. 2. Each tiny home tells a story about its owners, how it was built, where it has traveled, and what purpose it serves. Mario lost his house in the 2008 recession, and when it came time for him to buy a new house after paying off his debts, he looked for an alternative. He built his house completely on his own, and included features like saltwater batteries, wireless lights, a skylight, air conditioning, and a wireless door. Going green wasn't his motivation, but that lifestyle fit well with tiny living. Jenna and Guillaume didn't want the burden of a mortgage and debt, so they quit their 9-to-5 jobs for a tiny house lifestyle. Alexis and Christian always loved the concept of outdoor living. 3. When Mario went to register his tiny house in California, it was initially classified as a travel trailer. And while it is a widely accepted lifestyle, in the US it is forbidden by law to stay and sleep in a travel trailer full-time, so this makes tiny living a little tricky. Jenna and Guillaume were given an eviction notice last year when parked on a lot in Denver because someone complained about their house in the neighborhood they were parked in. Jenna believes things are changing, though. I think they're not going to tell 30,000, or however many tiny houses there are, people that they have to destroy their tiny home on wheels. Alexis and Christian think they have a great potential to positively impact the homeless population and low-income areas. For the situation is beginning to change. Fresno, California is now the first official city to classify tiny homes as a secondary residence, which meets the basic requirements for full-time living. That is a step forward. Mario is confident that once some states allow tiny homes to be permanently occupied, 7. 5 ranging between 100 to 400 square feet, one of the most fascinating parts of a tiny home is the creativity in fitting the necessities in such a small space. Overall it feels like me and it fits my personality. I've never lived somewhere where it's felt so much like me, says Alexis. One of the best parts for the couple is really tailoring for how you live your life, about boiling down to the essence of what you really love or need and how you use your space. Jenna says, you don't have to have the 4,000 square foot mansion to show off your wealth. It's a different idea of the American dream. The average cost of a US home is $341,500, while a professionally built tiny house averages around $47,500, and a personally built tiny home costs around $27,500. HuffingtonPost.com, 2016. Text 5. Is it right to take wild crocodile eggs? Adapted from an article by Ashley Donnelly. 1. It is the stuff of adventure novels, rugged Australians dropping into wild saltwater crocodile nests to snatch day-old eggs from territorial females. The eggs command a high price from farms which produce meat, leather and other goods, so there are plenty of people willing to take on the risky job. But whether this daring do should be legal or not has become a hot topic in the state of Queensland, where the government is reviewing its crocodile management plan. 2. Proponents say legalization in the neighboring Northern Territory brought substantial economic benefits, particularly to indigenous communities, without affecting crocodile numbers. Federal MP and former crocodile farmer Warren Inch strongly supports legalizing egg harvesting in Queensland. He would like to see a quota of eggs taken from nests, harvested, then sold to farmers who supply skins to global fashion houses. Mr. Inch said the number of saltwater crocodiles in the Northern Territory had grown substantially despite the provision for egg harvesting, with current estimates putting their population at around 100,000. Now there are more crocodiles in the Northern Territory than before when the white fella came to Australia, said Mr. Inch. The proliferation of the crocodile is huge and that in itself is causing a few problems. 3 conservationists say that only a few crocodiles reach maturity in the wild and claim that removing eggs could have a devastating impact. There's a reason why their survival rates are so low, because only the strongest, fittest baby will survive, Australia Zoo Crocodile Research Team leader Toby Milliard said. He added that accurate surveys of crocodile populations had not been conducted for a decade and needed to be completed before a decision was made. Anything people say about crocodile numbers is really hearsay and opinion, he added. For the final report into a live egg collection trial in Cape York is expected to be released by the Queensland Government in the coming weeks. Robbie Morris, Environmental Manager of Pormpurah Aboriginal Shire Council in Cape York, said the study has shown there would be no impact on populations if just a limited harvest of wild eggs are taken from nests that are at risk of being washed away by flooding. He added, if we do actually get the go-ahead to do a wild egg harvest, there would be scope for 3 or 4 permanent positions at the farm for local Indigenous people. 5 Andrew Piccone of the Australian Conservation Foundation said a range of issues needed to be considered before allowing egg harvesting in Cape York. At face value it presents some problems, but without any other economic opportunities on the Cape York, things like mining and other extractive industries will continue to be seen as the only option, and undermine tourism. He agreed that expanding the farming industry in Queensland could also provide culturally appropriate opportunities for remote Indigenous communities. 6 Meanwhile, the Northern Territory recently increased the number of eggs that can be harvested each year by 40%. Its Wildlife Trade Management Plan also allows for the take of 1,000 live crocodiles. The government aims to double its crocodile products industry to $50 million in 4 years. BBC.com, 2016. Text 6. Jimmy Nelson, the photographer documenting disappearing tribes. 1 Jimmy Nelson makes his living seducing tribes. For the last 4 years, the professional photographer has traveled the world, capturing astonishing images with a vintage 4x5 plate camera of tribes who might otherwise lose their traditions or disappear entirely. The images are remarkable because they depict native peoples in a way no one ever has before: powerful, not vulnerable; beautiful, not impoverished; proud, not marginalized. He's not the type to snap their photo and then jump on the first bus out of the village, never to be seen again. 16. The 46-year-old Briton builds trust with communities, putting the native people on a pedestal and glorifying them in the hope that in honoring their culture, we might somehow preserve it. 2. When we caught up with Nelson recently, he explained how he ended up becoming a photographer. It was 1984 and I was in a Jesuit boarding school with 1,000 boys when my hair fell out due to a condition called alopecia totalis. It never grew back. At that time, if you had no hair, you were a skinhead. Skinheads were regarded as people who were not only lower class, but violent, aggressive, pariahs of society. I went from being a well-brought-up, upper-middle-class schoolboy to being a pariah. I decided to go to the one place where I thought people would look like me. So in 1986, at age 18, I went to Tibet to live among the legions of bald monks. It was a massive life changer because it gave me a story, it gave me curiosity, and the pictures I took were published in the National Magazine of the Royal Geographical Society when I returned. 3. After Tibet, I kept photographing tribes as a hobby for about 6 years. I photographed indigenous groups in places of strife like Guatemala, El Salvador, Afghanistan and Somalia. 80% of the time we had no common language. You try to find translators, but when you find the tribe, many times your translator will admit that they don't know the dialect. So you're often forced to communicate on your own. I never gave up, I really wanted to connect. If you're 18 enough, it is possible to communicate with people who don't share your language. For many of the photos were made with a 4 or 5 second exposure, and to get into that process of mutual understanding there's been a massive build-up, sometimes weeks of building trust. And the trust is all based on telling them you're special, you're beautiful, you're powerful, for me. You're iconic. I was a visitor who had come to praise and document. I was not coming in as a predator. 5. The intricacy of using a vintage 4x5 plate camera meant that I was always on the edge, always in uncomfortable positions. If you're trying to take photos in -40C, and you've got a plate camera that requires your fingers, you're so desperate and so vulnerable that people want to help you, and that makes them feel more involved, makes them want to participate. Besides, digital photos all end up looking the same. By using film, you're capable of giving the pictures a personal touch. 6. I take food and supplies back to these villages, and the pictures as well. I also donate 10% of my earnings to the Rainforest Foundation. I hope we will all 21, they through realizing that not all should be abandoned when moving to the developed world, we by learning from the tribes what we have lost. It's also about motivating other travelers to go on their own journeys. Journeys that will give them a better sense what's going on around the world, and rather than worrying about what will happen 20 years down the line, inspire them to live in the present. BBC.com, 2015. Text 7. Young adults disconnecting with dumb phones. 1. When Ryan Gleason punches out a text message or takes a call on his cell phone at parties, he prepares to hear questions from onlookers, and sometimes snickers. That's because the 24-year-old carries a $50 flip phone, the Samsung Gusto 2. There's no touch screen or apps. No web browsing capabilities. No collection of music to enjoy through earbuds. Gleason is among cell phone users who choose to be dialed out of the world of iPhones, Blackberries and Androids. In an increasingly connected and accessible culture, these stalwarts have chosen handheld devices that offer only the basics, despite the social isolation and limitations that may come with them. 2. For Gleason, hanging up the iPhone demonstrates no grand realization about humanity, he said. Rather, it's a way to tamp down his compulsive email checking. With the basic phone it's a lot easier to just step away and say, "I'm not going to work right now," he said. He also feels as though he has more peace of mind and is able to just sit and think, taking in his environment on bus rides to work. I feel more free. 3. According to a Pew Research Center survey, some young adults who could afford the costly web browsing phones and the monthly fees associated with them are sticking with more basic devices. When Pew researchers recently asked these people why they didn't upgrade, a perceived lack of need and the high price of smartphones were the two main reasons mentioned most. Some young adults using the low-tech gear see smartphones as a potential disruption. Craig Griffin, a 36-year-old freelance illustrator from Chicago, said he has resisted upgrading from his 2-year-old Samsung slider, partially because of the 25 he feels seeing people glued to their screens. It's important for me to be there with the people that I'm with and give them my attention, he said. For those who don't have a smartphone, admitted there are times when they long for the power and convenience of having what amounts to a mini computer in their pocket. Gleason said he misses being able to look things up quickly on Wikipedia. When a couple of his league's softball games were rained out last year, Griffin still showed up to the field on his bike because he never saw the Facebook cancellation announcement. Everyone else on the team knew about it, he said. 5. Aaron Irvin, 25, who works at a guitar repair shop, gave up his smartphone about 6 months ago and now carries no cell phone at all. He said he misses being able to Google unfamiliar references that come up in day-to-day conversation. I felt like my smartphone made me, well, smarter, Irvin said. But once my battery died, I was just as ignorant as before. Irvin said his cell phoneless state does at times annoy his friends, but that the distance and quiet that replaces constant texting and Twitter monitoring makes it worth it. 628. Some who have resisted an upgrade said they could eventually be enticed to switch. Griffin said he foresees upgrading to a smartphone one day if applications are developed that would totally enhance my life. It just hasn't happened yet, he said. For now, a phone just needs to be a phone. ChicagoTribune.com, 2014. Text 8. Chaos Theory. Adapted from a column by Tony Vino. 1. I'd love to be organized. My wife is a natural planner. Her idea of an ideal date night involves a calendar. For me, anything more than 3 days away is a bit of a blur. I will therefore agree to do anything, as long as it's far enough in the future. There are some truly awful things I've been roped into due to my lack of 29. How else could I explain 5 days bird watching with my brother-in-law? That to me wasn't a holiday, more like a well-meaning hostage situation. 2. As well as diary management, my wife finds it relaxing to make endless lists of things to do. I get stressed by the very idea of creating a to-do list and generally don't manage to start one because I can never find a pen. I'm also wired to never remembering important dates. 3. Good organization is a virtue richly rewarded in society. A train ticket to London from Preston booked 3 months in advance is £11.50, if booked on the same day. It's the same except you remove the decimal place. Similar case in point with so-called low-cost airlines. They are low cost for those who book early and arrange things properly. On my last trip to Malaga, I'd forgotten to book enough luggage allowance, so I was charged more for adding a suitcase than the contents of the bag and flight combined. For thus the well-planned and well-ordered in life have a definite advantage. 32. The most spontaneous and creative people I know are administratively hopeless. I suppose it makes sense that original creative thoughts largely come out of chaos, not order. A recent report from Groningen University states that the level of disorder in life and surroundings can lead people to think more clearly and simply. They cite, for example, that having a messy desk, Einstein famously had one, as did writer Roald Dahl, can actually foster more creativity and better problem solving because people are forced to simplify their thoughts. 5. Perfect. I have some science to back me up next time I'm berated for forgetting my wife's birthday or my child's middle name. I decide to head out to my office with its messy desk of destiny in order to write an original comic masterpiece of astounding brilliance. The only problem is I can't find my car keys. Sorted, 2014. Text 9. Robots bring sunshine to the elderly. One at the Shintami care home. 40 elderly people gather in the main hall to watch a double act by robots. The little straight man, Pauro, has just led everyone in a dance. Pepper, the taller funny guy, is making old ladies cackle by trying, and failing, to guess their ages. These humanoids are using artificial intelligence to soothe, stimulate and entertain the old. 2. The robotic revolution has happened because of the convergence of two forces, robot technology and human aging. By 2050, 27% of the UK population is expected to be 65 or older. In Japan, with a shrinking population, the proportion will be 36.4%. 3 years ago the Japanese government unveiled its new strategy for robots, which aims to quadruple the size of the industry. Few sectors offer greater opportunity than that of elderly care. There is the Honda Walking Assist device, a lightweight apparatus of belt and leg braces, buckled to a stroke patient who would hobble awkwardly with a stick but now manages a steady walk. For some of the most useful technology is aimed not at the home's patients but at its staff. Many of those who care for the elderly are afflicted by back injuries, from the effort of repeatedly lifting and lowering immobile patients. An exosuit relieves this burden. Powered by compressed air, it adds 30 kilograms to the amount that a user can lift. Similar devices are being used by construction workers and airport baggage handlers to reduce the burden of their loads. Elderly workers are taking part in trials to see if such devices can extend their working lives. 5. Then there are the humanoid robots. Some people with dementia like talking to people. Tomiko Kuge, of Fujisoft, which makes Pauro, said. They feel self-conscious because they fear that they're repeating themselves or not making sense. Sometimes they get angry with their carers, but a robot soothes them and they can talk to it easily. 6. A robot like Pauro costs about £4,000, but is available to rent for £180 a month. About 300 are at work, mostly in care homes but some as receptionists in banks. The Times, 2016. Text 10. Parenting, an ancient art. 1. Today's practice of leaving babies to cry, keeping them in buggies and car seats for long periods and not allowing them the freedom to roam outdoors is raising a dysfunctional generation, a psychologist claims. Early societies had better ideas about being a parent than many 21st century families, according to Professor Dasha Novayes. Their children were cuddled and carried about, never left to cry, spent lots of time outdoors and were breastfed for years rather than months. But child rearing nowadays is increasingly depriving them of the practices that lead to well-being and a moral sense. 2. Professor Novayes led a study that looked at the parents of 3-year-olds and how their child-rearing skills compared to those of foraging hunter-gatherer societies of the past. She found that, unlike parents nowadays, ancient communities relied on extended families to look after their children or, as she said, people beyond mum and dad who also love the child. 3. They were also more likely to promptly respond to a baby's crying and fussing. Warm, responsive caregiving like this keeps the infant's brain calm in the years it is forming its personality and response to the world, said Professor Novayes. At the same time, our distant ancestors spent much of their time being held and caressed by their mother, forming a close bond. They were not spanked, she added. For the findings, to be presented at a U.S. conference next month, run counter to current advice from parenting gurus to allow controlled crying and to isolate misbehaving children on a naughty step or in their rooms. 5. Professor Novayes pointed to studies showing a decline in the well-being of American children over the past 50 years. There's an epidemic of anxiety among the young, she said. Kids who don't get the emotional nurturing they need in early life tend to be more self-centered. They don't have the same compassion-related emotions as kids who were raised by warm, responsive families. Daily Mail, 2010. Text 11. Detention for wearing the wrong trousers. Pupils at Heaton Manor School in Newcastle were taken out of classes after falling foul of confusing uniform rules. Angry parent Christine Reed said the minute her daughter walked through the school gates, she was taken into isolation. She told the Newcastle Chronicle, "She was in detention for 8 hours yesterday and she was deeply distressed. I'd understand if she'd behaved badly, but this is punishment for a pair of trousers the teachers don't like." Lynn Ackland, head teacher at Heaton Manor, said, "We have apologized and will apologize again to the pupils we wrongly put into detention and to their parents. This was a sincere effort to standardize our uniforms and there has been great support from the school community. But we will clearly need to be much more specific in future about what the standard uniform should look like." She added, "We have told parents children should wear tailored black trousers as opposed to very tight-fitting trousers, leggings, jeggings or cargo pants. However, we had not anticipated the many different styles we would be confronted with on the first day of term and we have clearly been overzealous and inconsistent in our response to this." TheGuardian.com, 2014. Text 12. Susie stuffs Facebook. Last month Susie Orbach, author of Fat is a Feminist Issue, backed a petition that urged Facebook to remove feeling fat from their status updates, alongside which a double-chinned, round-cheeked emoticon appeared. This emoticon adds to the damaging notion that size equals feeling and that small size equals good, Orbit wrote online, and that feeling bad equals fat. We tried to contact Facebook about the mounting fury, but it proved rather difficult to get hold of, but now it seems it was busy tinkering with the software. The description has been changed to stuffed and has therefore departed from its body-shaming nature. Fat, then, is no longer a Facebook issue. Evening Standard, 2015.